I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years. Bring gas.
Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
The gang's all here. We got our guy Kyle. We got Judd, Pat Riley, Zolgad here with the slicked back 1995 New York Knicks. You got to put the suit on to do the full Pat Riley.
Are you kidding?
The mid-90s. Yeah,
How
like
much
when
work that would be if I put a suit on?
you
I do
have a
this because
suit.
I didn't
Don't you have
shower.
Do you have a suit? Or you rent your suits though. You probably
I
don't
rented
have
my suit for Dex's wedding.
For
yeah,
my wedding, you rented, yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Dude, I think a full Kyle, if we could get Judd in like the full. By the way, a couple hours ago, it was like still like wet, slicked back too. It was very 1995 Pat Riley.
I would like to start a movement that we just get rid of suits. Like athleisure should be the way to do it. I know Dak
Coaches
can get
now.
married and stuff.
Coaches
Yeah.
don't wear suits. Pat Riley
suits-
will wear a suit now.
If I got to put on layers and I'm not going outside to do like winter stuff, like what's the point? I'm gonna be uncomfortable. Let me just wear like stretchy pants and a.
Can you imagine Chris
button-up.
Finch now forced to wear a suit every game? Which, by the way, pre-pandemic he would have been.
Did we see was he wearing suits like his first few months on the job, or was he he was post pandemic,
Yeah,
right?
he's post pandemic, so I don't think
no.
I've never seen Chris Finch wear nice pants ever. Even like when I got a beer with him once, I was like, he's just in the same Timberwolves garb
Yeah,
head
it's
to
Judd.
toe.
Nobody
We're
rocks
boys.
a quarter zip better than Chris Finch. Like, no
Bingo.
one.
Bingo.
Even
Born
PJ
at-
Fleck, which is, I know, a little bit of a ballsy take there, but I think Chris Finch rocks the quarter zip the best.
Born 5 days apart in 1969. Finchy and I are the same guy.
Same guy.
You guys are, man. You enjoy the simple things: a good game, a good beverage,
good
and some
beer.
athleisure gear.
Exactly right. Some good food. Exactly right.
I'm guessing you're wearing athleisure gear at Parlor when you're going to Parlor,
question
Judd,
about
sinking
it.
your teeth into one of those
Quarter zip or something like that. Exactly right. You know what? Because the point of going to Parlor Bar, which is fantastic, is not for me to look nice. It's for me to get a great meal, and Parlor takes care of that. In fact, they are in the North Loop, so stop in before a Wolves game. Have a great time. Try the famous Parlor Burger, craft cocktail menu, or sneaky one for you. The fried chicken sandwich is absolutely outstanding. Kitchen open until midnight on Friday and Saturday. Check them out again. Parlor Bar in the North Loop. Make it your pre- and post-game stop for when you go downtown to enjoy the Wolves and these days win games.
And then maybe when you're done, you can stay at Element Hotel just down the street from Target Center.
Love it.
You could bring some friends, some family for an upcoming Wolves game. It's a Marriott Bonvoy hotel for points purposes, right on the light rail, super walkable to some of the aforementioned great Minneapolis restaurants and bars. Garage parking at the hotel is also cheaper than you'll find around the arena and the stadium over there, Target Field too. City views, bright natural lighting, Element Hotel in the North Loop. Just a great spot if you're looking to either stay overnight or maybe it's a family friends weekend. Free breakfast, 2 breakfast tacos, avocado toast, sweet potato hash, talk dirty. 15% room rate discount at scorenorth.com/element, scorenorth.com/element. All right, Dex is going to guide us through the state of the Wolves here. They've just swept through the state of Texas over the last week, so let's rock and roll.
I feel like we're alternating State of the Wolves weeks with, like, last week it was we were all pissed off. Phil, you were off for that one. We were upset.
Yeah,
2
fire
weeks-
everybody.
2 weeks prior to that, it was like a successful little trip, and now we're on the high again here on the State of the Wolves. So here's a little snapshot overview. Currently, the Wolves 17-14 on the season. They are 8th in the Western Conference. They're a game back of the top 6 to being out of the play-in. Offensively, they're 21st in rating. In defensive rating, they are 6th. So offensive rating still kind of below average a bit, but their defensive rating, which also has shot up significantly over the last few weeks, they're 6th, though, overall over the totality of the season. Again, differing a different playoff odds from ESPN and Basketball Reference. So right now, ESPN has the Wolves as about a 51% chance to make the playoffs. So they're looking at them as a coin flip team to make the NBA playoffs, where Basketball Reference has it as high as 77%. So Basketball Reference's formula says Wolves are more of a lock for the playoffs than ESPN. From the Larry O'Brien trophy odds, 0.1% from ESPN, 0.3% from Basketball Reference. So both of them agree that they are right now a long shot to be the NBA champions. Haters. And if the playoffs started today, the Wolves would play the Nuggets in a play-in game, which would be an absolute blast. That could be a really, really fun game. So that's your snapshot of where the Wolves stand. Let's start with a vibe check. Who wants to lead us off in the vibe check here on the?
Let's go,
Flagrant Howls?
Kyle. Let's lead off with Kyle here.
Those basketball reference like playoff odds are like a hot dog. No idea what's in them, but I mean, I just consume them. But like,
Eat them up.
wasn't it like last week or 2 weeks ago you guys did that? And it's like the Wolves have a 0.01% chance to make the playoffs. And it's like, wait, they're like 500. Vibes are. Oh, I need a fun word. Vibes are, I don't know, improving. One other stat to throw on top of everything Dex just said: 9 and 4 in their last 13, and all 9 wins are against teams that are at or above 500. So not easy wins. Gone are the days, and this is a New Year's resolution for all of us. Just stop looking at the schedule. I don't know. Easy teams coming to town, Wolves probably going to lose those games. Good teams coming to town, Wolves are probably actually going to try and win. So I'm over trying to be like, oh, the Blazers are coming to town. That's a win. But I think they are improving. I think it took a little longer, Phil, than you maybe thought, like when we were both preaching patience. But about 35 games into this now, you're starting to see an identity on defense over pretty much the entire month of December. Offense is still really bad, but they have discovered what I guess we're calling the bronze lineup now with Julius Randle and 4 bench guys. That's a real thing that's like really valuable. You saw it again last night. So yeah, I think the vibes overall as we end 2024 are improving for sure.
I would say that the vibes are getting a clue. They seem to be getting a clue, including Finch too. So I mean, he does not get off the hook for the questionable start. He also gets credit for his work in this 3-game win streak. But it feels like they're beginning to get a clue about roles, about rotations, about the fact that if they do not work hard, if they do not play defense, they are inevitably going to lose. They've won 3 consecutive games, but to go back to what Dex said, they also, when we did this segment last week, had just lost 3 consecutive games, including a loss to the Knicks, which was an inexcusable embarrassment at home. So I'm not going to give them a ton of credit yet. I need to see far more stability, but it feels like they are all getting a clue about what needs to be done to win games, and that starts with the guy who, yes, dresses comfortably, but needs to be as good as he could possibly be when it comes to how he's going to run his team, Chris Finch.
I'm going to go in a different direction and say the vibes are maddening right now because every single game is the same.
It's last week. You're still mad.
But I even like the 3 games that they just won. And last night was a perfect example. This starting lineup does not work. It doesn't work. And unless there is a vision for, hey, just give this like another 10 or 15 games and you're going to see this thing click. Jaden's going to click. Mike Conley is going to go back to being the 35-year-old version of himself who doesn't look totally cooked. They start every game in a double-digit deficit. And then the best bench in the league in terms of chemistry and shooting and spacing comes in, fixes it. They go from like down by 12 last night. Boom, bench comes in, immediately cuts it to 3 or whatever it was. And the plus minuses are hilarious every single night because you get like DiVincenzo, and oftentimes it's all 3 of the main bench guys are like a plus 23, plus 25. DiVincenzo was a plus 23 last night. And there's plenty more to talk about with DiVincenzo's turnaround. But this starting lineup digs a hole every single first quarter. And then again to start the second half, like, oh, here's a 13-point lead down to nothing, and then now you're down by 10 again, and then you have to change up the lineup again. So if they could just, it's not even like an overhaul of the starting lineup. If there's a tweak in there somewhere without completely upsetting your advantage with your second unit, it's time at this point to pull that lever. So the fact that this team is 17-14 with 60% of its starting lineup incapable of scoring a basket, unless it's Rudy, getting a lob or something, is pretty incredible. They've played 380 minutes together on the season, the starting 5, and they are exactly break even for the year in terms of like net plus minus. It's been a lot worse lately. I would just say it's kind of maddening. They're winning games despite this atrocious 5-man combo that they run out there more often than any other 5-man combo. So,
but we at least all acknowledge the starting lineup has to change. Like I think at this point the easiest lever to pull is Mike Conley, and then just say like, hey Mike, you're going to do some bench stuff. The other option would obviously be Jaden. Real talk, I don't know what happens mentally to him. You can say that he gets paid all this money.
Conley would be fine. I think Conley would kind of love it, actually. You know what?
And the Jaden shooting stuff is an Achilles heel for this team that will absolutely kill them come playoff time. Like, he just hasn't found a consistent shot. Yesterday when the D'Angelo Russell news broke because he was traded again, surprise, surprise, I was thinking, like, man, what if you just replace, like, Jaden with Dorian Finney-Smith, right?
Yeah.
Another 3-and-D guy, but far more consistent. But I think they've at least gotten through to Jaden now that, hey, man, you're like 6'10", so if you're not going to hit threes, can you just maybe do something else? And for the second time in 2 weeks, he had 10 or more rebounds.
Yeah.
So that's 10 or more rebounds twice in 7 games. The first 308 games of his career, he did it twice. So maybe he's on to something. But on the plus-minus stuff, again, if I hosted sports talk radio show from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. and I had crazy numbers, oh my God, your ratings are awesome. I'm not going up against anyone, right? So bench plus minus, I do want to at least throw the filter in there that they are going up against second units. Yep. So just this idea of we do this all the time in sports. The bench guys are awesome. Let them start. That's not how this works. So the bench brigade, the 4 guys and Julius or whatever you want to call it, the 8 starters, I love that part. I don't want to mess that up. So that's why the easiest lever to me is if Rob Dillingham had 2 healthy ankles, just put him in for Mike. But until then, I think you guys know this. Finch is just going to be stubborn. I think you're going to see the same starting lineup all the way through January. I just do. I don't know if it's not the right answer, but I think he's going to keep doing it.
I agree with you in terms of it's not as easy as look at these bench guys that are dominating. You see what happens when a Jordan McLaughlin gets put into a bigger situation, his productivity decreased over the last couple of years when he was a Wolf. But I feel like with this version of DiVincenzo, there's more room for him either in the starting lineup and you saw, the last couple of games last night, and I think the last 2 games in a row, he essentially comes in middle of the first quarter and just plays all the way through halftime. And then did he not also play the last 18 minutes of the second half last night too? So that tweak at the end where it's 4 of the starters minus Conley plus DiVincenzo, and there's spacing, there's more energy on defense because it's a guy who's DiVincenzo flies around, and I think he is the type of dude that if you were to put him in the starting lineup and give him 5 or 6 extra minutes per game on average like they've been, I think you're going to see much more productivity with the starters. But yeah, I just don't know how you can continue with this starting 5 digging a double-digit deficit every single night and not make a change of some kind. So,
what's the thing with Conley too? Because to your point, Phil, he's at an age, he's declining clearly. I don't think it's some huge indictment of Mike if Mike does not start. But what's the issue there? Does Finch feel a loyalty to Conley? Is Finch concerned that if he doesn't have Conley out there to run the point, that the replacement is not going to be sufficient? Because it clearly works when the bench is playing, or it works okay. But what's with Julius, when I suggested that Julius not start and Naz should, there clearly is a discussion of, how you're regarded there and feelings being hurt and creating chemistry problems. I'm with you on Conley. I don't think it's oh my God, Mike, you're benched. He still plays, and he clearly is, unfortunately, it looks like, going off the cliff.
Well, I think this is where they're probably hung up. DiVincenzo is not a true point guard. Anthony Edwards is not a true point guard.
Sure.
Conley and Dillingham are the 2 truest point guards on the roster. And Conley, for his decrease in productivity, can still organize and is still a mature adult on the court. So if you figure that he can stir the drink and get other guys engaged, and you can say, I get the logic, and you can save DiVincenzo for that second unit. But I just think at some point you can't keep doing this game after game after game. And like I said, last night, dude, Conley was the first guy up off the bench every single time somebody made a bucket or did something big. With Julius, there's an ego. With Jaden, to Kyle's point, there's emotional maturity issues there. You could wreck the chemistry and wreck those guys. I don't think you have to worry about that with Conley. That's probably the first lever that I would pull with the starting lineup.
Jim Pete told us once, Phil, that you just can't jerk guys around in another starting lineup. And I do think, you guys have covered sports way longer than I have. I do think it matters to some of these guys, to start. It's a big thing, whatever.
Yeah.
I think Finch has I think there are politics, and people don't want to hear that, but it's just like managing any other organization. I think there's stuff that goes on behind the scenes that he has to manage. And to get around that, back to this bronze lineup, which is essentially Julius Randle, Nikhil, Donte, Nas, and Josh Minot, he was like, okay, it's not working with Julius in the starting lineup, but what if I gave Julius like 4 wide receivers and I let him play quarterback 1 for like 6 minutes in each half? Like, that's really profitable. In the Rockets game, he closed Finch without Rudy Gobert. All small guys, offensive minded, and they come back with they were like a 99.6% chance to lose that game. And they come back. And then last night, again, he just doesn't close with Mike. So I think he's trying to do other stuff that aren't the starting lineup thing, Phil. But I still think, with Mike, you can just say, Mike, it's almost the end for you, right? Like taking you out back at some point. But we can manage your minutes a little better. And also, too, like, you're never going to start again because you're an older guy who has a huge career and a great resume. You don't start Jaden. Like, what's the plan then? Like, you think it's just going to get better? And if it doesn't get better, then, like, have you just nuked your own trade asset that you wouldn't put in the Gobert trade? So I'm just a big energy for me today as we move into the new year is like, if you have problems with this team, I would like to know what your solutions are. I don't want to just hear what the problems are, right? Because, like, I know everyone wants to fire Chris Finch every other day, but I would like to know, I'll get into that later.
I will say on Jaden, and then we can get into favorite Wolves thing. They signed him to that extension thinking he was an ascending 22-year-old player who was shot 38% from 3 wide open corner threes a couple years ago and thought, okay, we're signing a dude who is a lights out defender who also at minimum on offense has emerged into a really good open 3-point shooter. And ever since he agreed to that contract, his shooting has declined. He's now shooting 30% on the season as he enters into his prime years. That's a red flag, and maybe it's one the Wolves could have seen coming. But I'll give you a solution. So I just point out the problems, but I'll give you one solution. The Timberwolves are 14 points per 100 possessions worse when Jaden is on the court versus off the court. So solution number 1 is less Jaden McDaniels. And if that means filling his minutes with more Nikhil or more DiVincenzo or more Josh Minot, who's just everywhere, not that he's a lights-out shooter yet either, but I don't know if I need 30 minutes a night from Jaden McDaniels. He could still start, but maybe you pull that 30 minutes down to 23 or 24 until he starts hitting more shots, and you fill the other 7 minutes, which may not sound like much, but it could be, with more offense, more spacing. The problem is, like, part of this starting unit, like, you're bogging down Anthony Edwards too. How can you unlock him and free him up with more spacing? So solution is a little less Jaden McDaniels and a little more of anyone else who can space the floor and make life easier for your best player.
And I just want to say again, like, I'm open to any of that stuff. Like, I'm really open to anyone being benched or whatever. But if you're going to replace Jaden with Nikhil, I need to know how you're going to rebound. Because right now, Ant just doesn't really want to do it some games. Your 38-year-old point guard has no physical ability to do it. Julius is out on the perimeter. So are you just going to, like, hemorrhage rebounding then?
I'm not sure I'm ready to crown Jaden an elite rebounder after the last 2 weeks. But if he's going to be a double-digit rebounder, then it's a different conversation.
And again, I'm just saying, go back and watch these last couple of games against, like, Luka before he got hurt and stuff. Nikhil and Jaden do not guard the same type of player. And I don't think Jaden should be on guards anyway, but I'm just saying, every lever that Wolves Twitter wants to pull, like when you pull a lever, right, something happens. You ever played a slot machine? Like the lights go? If you pull the lever, there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong with that. And that's where, with Mike, what could go wrong? You're going to lose the guy that I think his contract isn't even fully guaranteed after this summer. That one's not as much of a risk to try to fix this. You risk losing Jaden. I mean, might as well just trade him then. Like, trade him before. If you don't think he can shoot, if internally you think that after 315 games now, if you're like, it's never going to come around, he's never going to be DFS, then trade him before you're going to try to demote him to the bench and make him lose his value.
Yeah.
All right, so favorite Wolves thing, because I think even we touched on a little bit about 10 minutes ago, but my favorite thing has been Donte DiVincenzo over the last week plus now. I mean, he looks like the law of averages are starting to catch up in the good side of him after, shooting a bunch of shots and not having them fall. Over the last 7 games, Donte shooting almost 50% from the floor, 46% from 3. He's always like an initiator of offense. Like, even when maybe his shot wasn't falling this year, there were times where he was still getting the offense going. Now he's still coming off the bench. He played a ton down the stretch, obviously, last night. But my favorite thing, and I'm guessing you guys have thoughts on it too, is this the version of Donte that we can now expect? I know he also talked about how he's now more comfortable. I mean, he had to uproot his life, just like we've talked about with the trade, where he's in New York, and then all of a sudden he's got to be on a plane and pack up all of his belongings, join a new team, learn a new system, learn a new city, and now it feels like he's getting really, really comfortable. So I guess my vibe check and the favorite thing is this Donte Inferno, essentially? Is this the Donte we can now expect going forward?
This is the guy that they traded for, too. So DiVincenzo playing like he should makes the Cat trade make a whole lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil and I called this because we were at the Knicks game, and that probably was the last game in which the DiVincenzo big pout existed. Like, his body language sucked. He looked like he was having zero fun, zero joy. And I don't know if like he was pulled aside afterwards, if it occurred to him. There is a story that he talked to some guys about trades, but this is a guy that signed with the Knicks to be with his Villanova guys, and he clearly wanted to be there. And I don't blame him. The Knicks are certainly flawed, but they are a heritage franchise. They play in the Garden. You are in the Mecca of basketball, right? And he's playing with his guys. And, training camp starts and it's done. But this, to me, when we see the DiVincenzo now that we are seeing, this is what makes the Cat trade make a lot more sense. And I do believe this is the key player. I don't think Julius is. I think this is the guy that you're going to have on a very reasonable contract, long-term, and we are starting to see him play like he can play, and that is a huge plus.
I think switching shoes helped. I hated watching him wear orange shoes on those courts. Whatever court they decided to install.
Shoe guy.
I don't know if you were there last night, but they decided to uninstall that one.
What happened? Did they install the wrong court, or
No.
was there something wrong with the lake court?
No, the lake court, something went wrong with it that was discovered during the Spurs shoot-around.
It's frozen.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Well, what I asked was, because they've got that damn garden roof on top of Target Center that, if you guys recall, started to leak in the playoffs. Now, I think it leaked into the seats, but it's so warm here now. What I said is the roof leaking onto the floor now? I was concerned about that, but evidently that there was a flaw in the lake court.
Wasn't there a time when, like, 10 years ago, when Disney on Ice came and then they couldn't get the court ready because Disney on Ice's, like, ice was still on the court?
No,
was it the NCHC? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was the NCHC, and then a week of Disney on Ice. And what happened was it got warm outside, and the ice was below the floor, and the condensation built up on the floor itself.
Yeah, and they couldn't
had to delay the
towel
game.
it off fast enough. Yeah.
They had to delay that. I believe they have since then. I believe they have taken out the ability to put ice in the building, which is great because it is one of the worst hockey places I've ever been to. So I'm glad it's gone.
Well, thoughts with all the children that don't get to see Disney on Ice in its proper place, the Target Center downtown.
This is why I'm such a meat shield for Chris Finch, because I was like, back in the day, the best thing that happened at Target Center in December and January was Mickey Mouse skating around.
Yeah.
Like, things have gotten better. So,
Meat shield. What a...
oh my God. That's crazy. I'm glad I had no idea, by the way. People ask me, like, all night, like, what happened? So shout out to Judd for, like, knowing, but that was... Although it did work out if you're like a Minnesota sports fan. You just kind of got to watch the Vikings, then vent line, and then just kind of moonwalk your way over to watch the Wolves against Wembley.
smelled a rat there. I thought...
I kind of did
my
too.
First
I thought
thought
you
was,
pulled that.
Hold on a second. They moved that Vikings game, and now the Wolves are going to start at what? The original tip, 7:05?
Yeah.
I'm like, I think they're doing this on purpose.
When they sent the email, my first thought was, oh, yeah, they're late to the party on this. But, yeah, you should push the game back an hour. Let people settle in. And, by the way, real quick, Wemby is ridiculous. Did you get? There's a million different plays, but there was the one play where he was back to the basket in the paint, and Anthony Edwards was kind of guarding him, and then somebody came over to help. But he kind of dribbles and does like a half spin move. It's a play that you've seen a million times from lanky players in the paint, and usually it's like a scoop layup or something. And you're like, did he dunk that? It was a go-go gadget arms thing and I had the volume off when I was watching at the time, but that was wild. Like, he makes 2 or 3 plays every night where you're like, I've never seen that from a basketball player in my life watching the NBA.
I don't want to interrupt the momentum of this show. I actually thought that was one of the 3 craziest basketball plays I've ever seen in my entire life. It sounded like all of the air got let out of the stadium because it was when Michael Jordan is like trying to dunk it in Space Jam when they're all like attacking him and his arm just keeps going longer and longer. I'm telling you right now, I have never in my life seen someone post up like that, and Ant's like giving it to him too. And then he spins towards the middle. Rudy's there, Jaden's there, and all of a sudden the ball is just dunked, and you're like, wait, you're standing like next to the free throw line. How did that happen?
Crazy.
And it was like it kind of like zapped me. The place Grady, I think, even said like it's really quiet in here, and all of a sudden it was like a 3-point game, and you're like, oh my god, like we might, with all these drones and stuff, like we might just not be able to beat the aliens. And in that moment, I was like, this is over. But he is, I think I hate him for how just perfect. He's so good at playing basketball. Like Saturday morning, he gets up and just plays chess in Central Park. Like
It's raining.
And he's on the Spurs, and he plays with Chris Paul. I mean, if that team gets into the playoffs, man, they are going to get every whistle. They just flopped around for 48 minutes last night like a bunch of salmon out of the water, and it was crazy to watch.
How do
they got
refs get
so
tricked by
many
that?
calls. Dude, the Julius Randle thing, Julius bullies him into the basket. Wemby falls down, looks up at the ref with like the biggest puppy dog eyes, and then the ref was like, oh my God, I better call something. It was like 6-second delay. It was crazy that even happened.
And what's funny was that where they did the review right afterwards too?
Yeah, and they're like, oh, actually, we can't, just because he's awesome, we can't just give him every call.
And I actually thought, looking at the review, I was like, I feel like Julius fouled him twice on that play because he stuck the shoulder in and moved him out of the way.
Did, yeah.
And then he comes clubbing down with his arm, and they somehow overturn it. But I guess my favorite current Wolves thing is that dude Wemby played 37 minutes. He scored 34 points. He hit a bunch of key clutch shots down the stretch, grabbed rebounds, blocked shots. And I think the Wolves played him perfectly on defense for most of that game. The end sequence, too, where they got the ball out of his hand. Julius was on a mission last night. I'm going to make this dude's life miserable on offense and defense. I thought 34-8, despite what the Wolves were doing to him, I thought they did a great job. And he's just an alien freakazoid who's going to dominate the league for the next 15 years.
How do you get that Julius more frequently? That's what I expected. Like he's got dog. Like he does not play defense at times because he elects not to. But like, how do you get that guy? Because like he's a grinder. He's got talent. It feels like when Julius Randle is in the right headspace, he can be a really valuable player. Unfortunately, I don't feel like you see that frequently enough.
I think I said this to Judd last week when Phil was out, but I think in New York, Jalen Brunson's been awesome this year. But in New York, Julius Randle, because he was there longer, I think he probably thought, like, this is my team. And then and obviously it's Brunson's team. He's maybe one of the best point guards they've ever had. Then he comes to Minnesota, and I think Ant's better than Brunson. But I don't know if Julius was ready to be like, that was the one thing in Carl's defense. Like, Carl did kind of accept, like, I am the second banana. Like, this is your franchise. I don't know if Julius did that yet. And I don't know if he was like, I'm a dog. Also, I'm, like, one of the only guys on the team that has this big contract situation coming up next summer. I can't, like, take all these steps back and, like, lower my own value. But to Judd's original question, I think unlocking him on offense with this lineup now where it's like you play with 4 bench guys who all defer to you and I'll look for you late in the shot clock, or like when we get rebounds, we give it to you to play. I mean, Julius said, I'm playing point forward with that group. I think unlocking him offensively and making him more comfortable is how, Phil, that point you brought up about that last possession, it's not as pretty, but my favorite moment from last season in the playoff run was when the Wolves had this 5 guys and they all switched like crazy against the Suns late in, I think, maybe game 4. It's like one of the best defensive possessions ever. Every guy swings around and covers for their other teammates, and then Ant goes and has that killer dunk. Watch that play last night. Like, they all recover so well, and Rudy knows exactly to cut off Wemby's water, and then Donte guards 2 with his hand and forces Sohan to throw up a green-headed just bomb at the basket. Like, talk about having to redo the court. Like, he threw that thing so hard at the backboard. But
it hit the other side, on the other side of the rim.
I've never seen someone miss from the slot where you go over the rim and don't hit any rim, just hit the backboard. But I think that's it. I think they had to get Julius more comfortable offensively for him to buy in defensively.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to any final takes here on the state of the Wolves, let's talk about North Star Realty here. We got a new partner on the show, Flagrant Howls. Dex, tell them about it.
Yeah, how about this? Even before I tell you about Heather, Wolves fans, if you'd like 2 free lower-level tickets to the Wolves-Cavs game on January 18th, all you have to do is go to wolvesrealtor.com, register to win those tickets, and everyone that does register also gets a 2025 schedule magnet. So you get something out of it. Either you're going to get Wolves tickets to go see them play the Cavs, who are one of the best teams this year, and everyone that registers regardless does get a 2025 schedule magnet. Plus, New Year's starting. If you're thinking about selling your home, you're thinking about buying a home now that the holidays are over, go give our friend Heather a call at wolvesrealtor.com, and you can see her at all the Timberwolves games as well. Wolvesrealtor.com to win those tickets and to get a 2025 schedule magnet.
Also, shout out to Brixworth, a couple blocks away from Target Center in the North Loop. Perfect for pre-gaming before home games or post-game after home, and away games too. Bunch of TVs, some of the best dry rub wings you're going to find in the Twin Cities. A couple weeks ago, a group of Wolves fans sent us a picture of them just plowing some Detroit-style pizza and the Cool Ranch Doritos seasoned dry rub wings and the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA, all of it at Brixworth in the North Loop. They have the OG location in Burnsville, too, in the South Metro. But, yeah, check them out before or after a game. And you can even get some cheaper parking options down there, too, if you want to drive down Park and then walk a couple blocks to the game. Brixworth in the North Loop. It's the wrong button. But that's okay. We'll give you the Vikings horn.
It's a transition sound.
I mean, they're fortunate.
We got to find like a howling sound
Can't
for
really
the
go wrong.
transition.
Can we use the Wolves howl? Will we get trademarked for that? We could use
I
that.
don't
Right?
think
It's
so.
like a generic wolf.
If you can find it, let's throw it on the button bar.
Okay.
Any other final takes or thoughts from you guys off this last week of glorious Wolves basketball?
Kyle.
I had something, but I'll just be honest. If you did, what do you not like about the Wolves right now? What are the opposite of good vibes? I'll keep it short, but I just really don't like the way we talk about NBA head coaches in general, but really Chris Finch. It kind of reminds me of stocks now to a little lesser extent, where like people are like, I have a buddy who checks his 401k balance like 6 times a day. And it's like, buddy, you're 35. Like, you're not going to tap into that for a while. So like, let's just
crash
chill.
eventually too for a while.
Right, but it's like, like,
Be desperate.
yeah, it went down a nickel the last 3 days. We got to unload this stock. And it's like, okay, but it's up 400% since we acquired FNCH back in 2021. And I'm not saying that the stock right now is performing well. I think we just highlighted that the starting lineup is the biggest issue on this team when you're kind of nuking yourself and setting yourself behind the 8 ball. But we do love stats on this show, and we do love data and facts. So I'm just going to put this one out here. Going back to 2010, I think there's been like instances of like 18 times where coaches were fired in season. One of those teams won a playoff series. 1 for 18. And it was when David Blatt was let go, and they were like 31-10. Because LeBron didn't like him, and Ty Lue comes in. Okay, but again, Mike Brown, coach of the year, extended this summer. He's the problem. Well, guess what? The Kings gave up 45 to the Lakers in the first quarter after they put in Doug Christie from Basketball Wives. So again, back to my if you have issues, I need to know who you're replacing them with, because I'll tell you right now, and Phil can kind of back me up on this one. Internally, Chris Finch has looked at 179-degree difference internally than he is on like externally on social media. He's not going anywhere until this ownership thing gets figured out. And that ownership thing hopefully gets solved early in January. But I don't think he's having a great year. I'm not always a fan of some of the stuff he does. I think it's ridiculous when Josh Minot plays well and he doesn't get another stint. But I just what proof do you have that firing your coach mid-season is the way to do it? Like, if you just fire Judd tomorrow from Purple Daily, you think it's going to be smooth sailing on Tuesday when you start doing the pods? Like, there is so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes that I don't think people realize. And again, Chris Finch, call some timeouts. You're not Phil Jackson. Don't give up 14-0 runs. Play the guys who deserve to be at the table. But just this idea that Mike Honore is going to come in and just be like, yeah, I'm Ty Lue. It's like, I don't know, man. I love how you talk at halftime, but I just think firing coaches midseason is really embarrassing and makes your organization look bad. And the reason the Wolves have been the same old Wolves for 33 of the 35 years is because they do dumb stuff like firing coaches midseason and having 6 GMs over 6 years. Like, I know you don't like it, man, but this isn't 2K. So continuity matters.
I feel like most of their coaches have been fired mid-season.
And how did that work?
Dwayne Casey, Flip, Tibbs. Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Rambis?
You're right.
Did Rambis get too full?
Oh, God.
Rambis shouldn't have had 2 games.
I've blacked
Single
out
worst
those
coach I've
years.
ever
So I
seen
think
in my entire
Kurt
life.
Rambis is like the only dude that they didn't fire mid-season.
Sam Mitchell was after, I think, the last game of the season that he coached after Flip's passing.
But he was
right?
like interim too.
Yeah.
He
But I'm
never
just
got
trying to
the
think
official.
about, like, I think you're right. I think since Flip got fired the first time, the majority have been.
But then Flip
in
also
season.
took over halfway through. Was it
For Bill Blair.
Bill Blair got fired.
Yeah. And that was an
Then
inside
Sidney
job. I mean,
Lowe.
that one was coming. That one was coming. But yeah, the Wolves are the poster child too for not doing this. First of all, the Kings look like idiots. Like the Kings are a joke right now. I mean, Mike Brown's on his way to the airport to fly to Los Angeles to play the Lakers. He's done media for the day, and they call him on his cell phone and say, dude, you're fired. Don't bother coming. That's a complete joke. But Dwayne Casey, 500. You're out of here, right? How did that work? The Flip thing, which was incredibly reactionary. So, yeah, and look, yes, Chris Finch has not had a great season, but unless you can paint a picture for me that says Chris Finch is the biggest problem, I'm not going near that dude's job.
Yeah, I'll add on to this too that it's not just a Timberwolves thing, but in any discussion about sports or really anything, we lose the ability to criticize and critique and then not have it go to the next step of fire someone or someone's an idiot. It's like such a black and white thing in all discussions. Like there's room to say Chris Finch is maybe the best coach in Timberwolves history. He's right there with Flip Saunders in a lot of ways. And also there's some things that he needs to be better at this year with lineup rotations and starting lineup and things like that. So I think you can poke at something and not ultimately want, like PJ Fleck is a great example. PJ Fleck. All right, let's be better at not burning timeouts. Let's not punt on 4th and 1 from the opposing team's 41-yard line. And there's probably 3 or 4 other things. And he's the best Gopher football coach since Murray Warmath in like the early 1960s. Absolutely should not be anywhere near a hot seat. But you're a hater if you point out and criticize things. So I just there should be room for Chris Finch should not be anywhere near a hot seat. And also there's pressure to get moving on some changes that need to be made. Like there's a gray area here that can be explored without firing someone's ass midseason.
And if they lose in 5 games in the first round or they get bounced in the play-in, I am telling you right now, because I don't think people believe this, I am open to a coaching change. Like expectations come April time, if you still haven't figured it out over the full 82-game season. But again, like I actually looked, since 2010, I think it's been 29 coaches fired in season. And one of them over the last 15 years has like taken his team somewhere in season. And most of those guys that get replaced, then they go get a brand new coach the next. So if you fire a coach midseason, you're essentially saying we have no hope, and it's just so bad that we're just trying to like pop a zit. This team has issues and flaws. Don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna pop that zit by just getting rid of the coach, the guy who might be holding everything together behind the scenes while the parents fight with Mark and Alex and Glenn, like I think you're opening up a can of worms, and then you are back to the same old Wolves.
And don't forget, too, on the eve of training camp, and look, the Karl Anthony Towns trade will pay off financially. Like you're going to get yourself out of a lot of cap hell. But, you know, if we're going to have this conversation right now, this also involves Conley, who, by the way, I'm not going near his job. But, I mean, on the eve of training camp, you traded a player that was a core guy for 2 players and said, okay, let's make this work. Like if you're Chris Finch privately, if I'm sipping a beer in my joggers and my quarter zip, I'm saying,
athleisure,
I'm saying, hey, gentlemen, look at what I'm asked to do here. Like he was asked, like to expect that Chris Finch can magically wave a wand at the beginning of training camp and say, okay, Cat's gone. Julius, who clearly is a strong personality of sorts, and Donte, they're here. I'm going to make this work. Again, egos. There's a lot of things here. So like if we wanted to have the real why are the Wolves where they are discussion, Tim Connelly has to be looped in. And I ain't firing Tim. So like this is a bigger discussion in my opinion than just a coach.
And also when you say why the Wolves are where they are is not as bad of a place as everyone's making it sound like. Where the Kings are 13 and 19 and just fired their coach.
You're right.
Like the Wolves are right there in the thick of the competition for the 5th seed in the Western Conference. Have they taken a slight step back from last year? Absolutely. Was that trade meant to be an immediate linear move up the ladder in 2024-25 without any sort of reset? No, like it was a trade made to unlock a 3 to 5 year period. And I know fans are sick of hearing that, but even with their imperfections and even with a starting lineup that hasn't been able to figure it out and 60% of them can't make a shot right now, they're beating some of the best teams in the NBA and they're 3 games over 500. And I think everyone needs to take a deep breath, even if they lose a couple more games here. Like this franchise was in poverty for years and years and years. And if this is like the worst of it, where they might have to take a slight step back as they figure this thing out and get out of the second apron, while there's an ownership situation lingering, it could be worse. One more thing for you guys, I guess least favorite thing. So the NBA fined Anthony Edwards $100,000 for using profane language.
Don't do this. Don't do this. I'm going to get fined by Hubbard. Don't do it.
You guys can pounce on me if you want to.
Pull the trigger.
I know Judd disagrees, and Kyle's going to hammer me for this too. So he's now been fined $175,000. If you want to be the face of the NBA, you don't need to drop an F-bomb every other word when you're on live post-game television. Calm down with the F-bombs. You want to be the face of the NBA, you don't need to mix in an F-bomb every other word.
And unplug. And
grow up a little bit.
Unplugged, you have to subscribe, and then he can swear up a storm. Okay?
Sure.
So he's done with FanDuel.
Monetize it. Sure.
He's done with FanDuel. I want Ant unplugged. I will subscribe. But
he's Anticlaus, okay? We're promoting him as a face for the NBA
you know what?
for kids.
Drink your effing Sprite, Phil. Drink your effing Sprite.
He's dropping F-bombs every other word. And I think the NBA is saying, listen, we love your personality. You don't need to swear every third word. Let's calm down just a little bit.
There is no better person to answer that question than me, because I love a good swear word. And I'm telling you right now, I would have been okay with those fines if every social page that the NBA runs didn't run all of those videos promoting the athlete, okay?
That's a little bit hypocritical.
Okay, so I'm just telling you right now, because this is a real thing. This is a real thing going on behind the scenes. He is getting frustrated doing media because he was so excited after that Rockets win. That's him. So, I mean, again, I'm not even going to get into the whole swearing thing, but you are asking him to not be his original self. And if you want more Nikola Jokic's doing media, okay, we're not even getting into the ratings thing. I hate to be this guy because they don't have kids, but if you're listening to have kids, your kids are probably going to drink and maybe even swear and maybe even smoke a cigarette when they get older. So seeing the F word on TV, man, at least he moves and shows his true self and is enthusiastic. If I need to see Nikola Jokic or Luka Doncic just avoid media, like the whole time, this league has a problem right now. They don't have a guy to step into the Steph and LeBron void, right? The ratings were so high. Those guys are probably done. And if you can embrace him, I don't know, man. Swearing, like if swearing is the big thing, I get that he should try to reel it back, but he's going to reel it back to just skipping media. And Judd's been in the locker room, Phil's been like, he's just going to skip media. And you're not going to get any quotes from anyone.
But then that says something about, is it that hard of an ask? Dude, you mentioned Steph Curry, LeBron, go back to Kobe, MJ. Hey, it's live TV. It's a press conference. I am the face of the NBA. I am the face of my franchise. You know, I tone it down. I tone the language down a little bit because I'm playing to a mass audience. If the NBA decides, you know what, we're not cool with that language, and maybe we'll stop promoting you as a face of the league if you can't clean it up a little bit, I wouldn't blame them.
But then why
you guys are trying to drag down America, Kyle and Judd?
Then don't promote it.
Trying to drag
don't
us into
promote
the
it.
mud.
Don't do the videos. Don't do 114 million followers.
But we bitch and moan when guys aren't themselves. But then now we want him to sanitize himself.
Wait. So you're saying it is impossible to give an opinion or a take without saying the F-bomb 4 times in a post-game interview?
From my athletes, I want as unfiltered
That's an unreasonable
as possible.
ask.
I do not want them to think about what they're saying. I do not want them to have to think about it. I want as unfiltered as possible. And by the way, when you go to school, the F-bomb was being dropped when I was in 6th grade at St. Therese. So, like, if you think that your kids are hearing Aunt say the F word, you know what? Daddy says it too. So, is Daddy going to have to pay a $100,000 fine? I don't think so.
If you don't want your kid swearing or you want to protect your kid, don't let them swipe over to the For You page on social media right now, because every third post is pornography. Okay? And in that Ant quote, by the way, he gave a real basketball quote. Like, he was like, we were trying to run this set. He was giving you like real nerdy basketball stuff. And then he swore because he's so excited. And you know what's going to happen next time? Leah B or Katie Storm. And I'm with Phil a little bit. It's like, can't you rein it in a little bit? But to Judd's point, I want the most authentic Anthony Edwards. I want him ordering McDonald's, post-game Zoom. That's the stuff you remember. He's getting pissed off, and he's going to just start saying, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
How about this? On FanDuel, okay? Team partner.
You mean the gambling app?
Yes. Do the interview post-game, clean it up, and then air it. It doesn't need to be live.
Like bleep it up. You know,
I'm saying when they come back from break, hey, we talked to, you know what? I bleep and love this game. I bleep and love you guys. It's all bleeped out.
Another option would be if we as society just decided that words are only words, and we can, let's just take these 6 FCC censored swear words or whatever.
I've never
and
debated
open them up for
for
casual use. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a prude. I don't know. Steph Curry doesn't swear on TNT and Bay Area, Bally Sports North or whatever.
Yeah, but he also thinks about what he says. Ant doesn't. That makes him so valuable in our world.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to win this argument, but I think he is on the. I love this guy, and I think he is the face of the franchise and maybe the NBA at some point. I also think it's fair to say that he is on the immature side of 23 compared to other star players that have come before.
Sure.
I think that's a fair criticism. And this is the gray area I'm talking about.
Yes.
I feel like I can say that and not be a hater or want him traded or whatever. I think there's room for some criticism. And also, he is unbelievable and is one of the 10 best players in the world. Like,
hey, listen, as we reflect back on a big year for all of us and this show and other things, still not super amped that I got on here and shed tears after a post-game pod. But that's who I am. So I think people enjoyed that for the most part, except the ones that make fun of me. I don't want Anthony Edwards to change. And if you want him to be more Jason Tatum and both teams played hard, I mean, go back and watch that Netflix thing. Jason Tatum was about as exciting as a box of vanilla wafers. So I know it's a thin line, and okay, you're live and stuff, but there's a lot worse things going on in pro sports and in the world. And if people are $100,000 fine, man, is pretty tough. Like, you challenge the integrity of the league and you do the money sign, you say this was rigged. I think Fred VanVleet got $75,000. It's like, okay, so I said the F word and I'm getting 100. Like, I want consistency.
Oh, they're being consistent.
Yeah, they're going to consistently keep finding.
They're going to find $1 million this year.
The fines are just going up.
Oh man, there's your state of the Wolves here. Flagrant Howls. Happy New Year to everybody, and drop as many F-bombs as you'd like in 2025. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.